Then marry those that please you of other women, 2 or 3 or 4. But if you fear that you will not be just, then marry only one. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're listening to the Niqabi Diaries series, Polygyny Talks. What follows is a sister's account of her experience with polygyny. Due to the nature and sensitivity of the topic, some sisters have chosen to remain anonymous. This series was put together in a humble attempt to gain a better understanding of the relevance of polygyny in our times and how it is practiced. Please be respectful in your comments. Finally, I thank all the sisters who have taken part by sharing their stories. May Allah bless you and your families with an abundance of khair in this world and the next, and may Allah accept from us. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Polygyny Talks. Alhamdulillah, very excited today to speak to a sister that I've wanted to talk to for a long time, because I've seen a couple of clips or talks with her online about polygyny, and there isn't many, to be honest. But alhamdulillah, we have with us today Sister Mecca. Sister, could you please introduce yourself a little bit for the listeners and tell us how you got to be in polygyny, inshallah?
All right. Well, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. My name is Mecca Nandi, and I am also known as the co-wife coach. And I have been in polygyny for almost 20 years out of the soon-to-be 27 years of marriage with our husband. Alhamdulillah, I'm one of 3 wives. And me being the co-wife coach was not something that happened automatically. It was something that basically I saw myself doing initially privately for a lot of people earlier on in our polygynous journey as far as within my family. And it was something that I saw was a need, and I felt as though that I had something to offer as far as with the education and support for women in the communities as far as from polygyny from a woman's perspective, because for so long I've always heard the male's perspective, but not too much from the female's perspective or the woman's perspective. So that's one of the reasons why I have come out and started what a lot of people know as me being the co-wife coach.
Alhamdulillah, Allahumma barik, sister, mashallah. So you mentioned that you've been in marriage for almost 27 years, and of those 27, it's been 20 that you've been in polygyny. So can you take us step by step? How did your marriage become a polygynous one, or how did, you become, basically a co-wife?
Okay, so it's been almost 20 years of us being a polygynous family, and my husband comes from a polygynous family. So when we married, he mentioned, he asked, I should say, that, will I have a problem if for some reason he actually chose to take on a second wife? It wasn't something that he was interested in at that moment, but it was something that he wasn't sure if it would be a part of his future, especially being as though he had a really great experience as far as being raised in a polygynous family. So he had a good example, and at the same time, he felt as though that's most like it's something that would be possible for his future. So when he mentioned that before we got married, I looked at his family, I looked at the example that he had, and I said, sure, I'm open to it. It's not like I'm going to run away. Mm-hmm. So within the first 7 years of us being married, that was something we had the conversations on and off about polygyny, me also researching, studying, so on and so forth, and me just getting familiar as to what that looked like as far as in Islam, because I don't come from a Muslim family. So over those years, I was able to really kind of become educated, more informed, and at the same time familiar with, just the practice of positive polygyny in some families that were within my city. And I was like, okay, sure. So it was one day we were sitting outside of a masjid, and we were talking about me going overseas to study. Maybe I was going to be away for a few years, and I said, oh, well, you're going to need another wife. Now, that wasn't the reason why he took another wife, but in that conversation, I felt comfortable enough in saying that without any reservations or any type of regrets. And at that point, at least I knew that if that was to become a part of our reality, that I'm more open to it than what I may have thought earlier on. Just with not knowing a lot of things. So the information and the education definitely helped a lot. And even when he did marry my first co-wife, it was something that was still like it was I don't want to say fun, but it was fun to see their courting process. Meaning, like, she was happy, and this was someone that I knew, and he was happy. And even to this day, and I love sharing this story, that their niqab was at my home, and I brought her favorite cake for the niqab because I cooked for her guests, and because there was a few witnesses, but she did have some family members that were there as well. So I cooked, and I made her favorite cake, this, that, and the fourth, and the niqab was really nice. And after everyone left, and he was in at the time, my new co-wife and her husband, and I'm like, okay, sound like him, I didn't think anything of it. And I was actually happy for them. As I was cleaning the house and I was getting ready for bed, he came back in the house. He came back home. I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, you just got married. Like, why are you here? And he had mentioned that the both of them had talked about it, and they wanted to make sure that I was fine on her first day. So that was something that she shared with me, and that he also considered of me as far as my emotions, and making sure that I was being as though that this was something that we all were embarking on for the first time. And I thought that was absolutely beautiful, mashallah. And may Allah reward them graciously for even considering me in such a manner. Allahumma ameen.
Alhamdulillah,
so that was like
the start I definitely think that, not only that, but I think that you were more than deserving of that, even because of the amount of effort and kind of openness and acceptance that you showed towards the whole situation. I mean, subhanAllah, like for some people listening now, they might think, well, the amount of effort you put, you actually cooked for her in the cast, subhanAllah, and had it in your home as well. So, for some co-wives that may even be accepting, that still wouldn't be something they would be prepared to do, subhanAllah. So I think that's something really nice. You gave her a very kind of welcoming gesture and showing that, you're open, basically you're showing that your house is open to almost, so I think that's really definitely nice. And alhamdulillah, it's good that they kind of reciprocated those, those kind of feelings.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, it was beautiful, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
But that doesn't mean it doesn't mean that it was like, happily ever after and everything was super picture perfect, because it wasn't. It definitely had its ups and downs, as expected, because we're all human. But I will say that it was a beautiful start. It was definitely something that was a beautiful start. But the day of the walima was when it really kicked in emotionally, which was a few days later. So mashallah, everything happens for a reason. And a lot of times people say, oh, well, you're so positive and you don't experience, jealousy or, emotional ups and downs. Absolutely. Yes, I do.
Yes,
I am human just like everybody else. I am human just like everyone else. And we definitely had our ups and downs, but those ups and downs were a part of the building of who I am as Mecca Nandi the woman, Mecca Nandi the wife, Mecca Nandi the co-wife, Mecca Nandi the mother, but also it also built me to be Mecca the co-wife coach in so many ways that if I had to do it all over again, I would absolutely do it all over again. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So with regards to the kind of selection process, you mentioned that you were like you found it like fun to see the kind of courting process that they had. Did you have any involvement with the selection of your co-wife, or was it just something that happened to be that you know her already and, you know, your husband had approached her? How did that span out?
You know what? Actually, I did. I was helping in the beginning. And I actually suggested her. My husband also would ask if I could be a part of the process to help, meaning like almost, it's not like a wali. I know with a wali or wakil for the women, they're checking the men out and to them and, investigating and so on and so forth. And it's not like I was to that extent, but we all know that men know men and women know women.
Yes.
So before he was even sitting in front of anyone and talking with anyone, he wanted to make sure that this person was, serious and that this wasn't a game and that it was somebody that is going to also, not just what he's looking for, because a lot of times people think about the physical aspect, but if this was someone spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, mentally, that, that's also feeling to what he's looking for. And if a person doesn't know that, or I put it to you this way, if this person knows, okay, that you're, that they may fit this particular bill, or if this person is fitting this particular criteria, then it's just like, okay, let me just verify. Like me, I'm just verifying. Does it seem like it is? And, is this person, are they checking most of the boxes, if not all of the boxes, or at least half of the boxes? And if so, then that might be a consideration. And it wasn't like it was a whole bunch of people. It was only really 2 people. With the second being my, the person that he actually married. So, it actually turned out really well. But after that, I never was a part of the process again. Me personally, I have no desire nor want to be a part of that process. Because not to say that it's a bad or hard process, but it was just like, okay, 1, I did it. 2, okay, but like, if for some reason, if something doesn't work out, everybody looking at you. Yeah. Like, oh, you suggested this, or you brought this to my attention. No. That was, and I was young. We were also young then because we were in our 20s. Yeah. So it was just like, but now that, we're older, he know what he doing. He know what he want. He know what he like. He can seek out the wali, wakil, and do what he do. But yeah, just then at that time, that was something that I did do. I was happy to do, but, just being older, I mean, like, I feel as though that, that was something that I wanted to help, but I didn't really, I think I was, my emotions were different then. Yeah. And not to say that I was less emotional and I'm more emotional now. No, it's not that. It's just that, I was so wrapped into, really kind of pushing myself or my feelings aside. And not to say that I was sad, because I wasn't. I was actually excited about this. But it was just like, how can I help him? How can I help her? And then when a walima hit, it was like, wait a minute, you didn't think about you. Like, how are you going to put all these things into place? So me looking at it now at an older age, I'm like, okay, I would have did things differently. I still would have been supportive. Absolutely. I still would have had both of their backs and wanted to be able to help and assist as much as I possibly can. But I would have considered myself more. Making sure that I was okay. So that way, once it's all said and done, I'm not falling apart like I did emotionally in the beginning, because once everything was done and once he was officially like, she had her nights and stuff like that, that's when it really hit me. And the emotions my emotions were up and down and all around the place. And that's the part that I would fix. I would make sure that emotionally I was being honest with myself and taking care of myself in order for me to be good. Because when you're all over the place emotionally, you're no good to yourself, let alone other people. Yeah, of course. So that would be something that I would have done. That's the only thing that I think I would have done differently compared to what I did. If I had to change anything, that would be the only thing changing. To make sure that I was considering my emotions first before other people's.
Okay, so that leads me to ask you basically about the qualities that you think a woman needs to have in order to be able to be in polygyny, because, and like, you know, based on what you just said and your experiences, what and you're a coach obviously as well, so I'm assuming that you do like guide other sisters through this kind of process. So, you know, how can a woman navigate those emotions in an honest way, and in a way that's not going to be harmful as well to herself or to the people around her? And how do we, as women, how do we get past issues of jealousy and things like that?
Well, you're not going to get past jealousy. Let's make that clear, because even as Muslim women, we have the beautiful examples of Aisha radiallahu anha as well as Hafsa radiallahu anha, who both displayed forms of jealousy, right? We're not going to be jealous people. We're not going to be able to just erase it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we can do, because people look and they say, oh, well, the mothers of the believers, they were jealous and this, that, and the fourth, and I can't be better than them and this, that, and the fourth. Yes, you're absolutely right. They were jealous. We can't be as, good or better than them, because they were like top tier, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But what we can do is we can look at the examples a little closer, because when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought to Aisha's attention, radiallahu anha, where when she was in the jealous state when it came to Zainab, radiallahu anha, and he actually addressed them. He basically gave her an ultimatum. You can stay, or you can leave. So if you look at those examples where it was addressed, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam addressed, her jealousies, and not in a harsh way. If we look at the examples, let's look at it full circle. It wasn't done in a harsh way, but it was done in a way where it was obviously something serious and something to be very mindful of, right? When he brought certain things to her attention at those times, and I wish I had my book to be able to read the hadiths, and maybe I can share those with you later.
Inshallah. Where
once it was brought to her attention, she didn't become like, there was no more jealousy. What did she do? She was able to control it better. She was able to become disciplined within that jealousy, because jealousy is an emotion. It's a natural emotion. So we're not we are human. We do have feelings. We do have emotions. We have all different types of emotions. But when it comes to those emotions that are not doing us any service or any good, we have to learn how to control it. There's even a hadith where it talks about the one who is the strongest, is the one who controls what?
Their anger.
Their anger. And what is anger?
It's an emotion, subhanAllah.
It's an emotion. So when we have control over that, we have the bigger hand, the upper hand. It's not to say that you will not feel it, but it's to show you that you can control it if you choose to, if you prepare yourself to. And that's one of the things, as not just as a coach, but as a woman, I have to be mindful of. And I try to bring awareness of the controlling of the jealousy, the controlling of the emotions. There's different changes and different stages that we're all going to go throughout our marriages. Because polygyny doesn't mean that, you're going to have jealous experiences in your marriage. No, people have jealous experiences in monogamy.
Exactly.
It's more so when that jealous emotion comes and arrives. What do? Do you allow it to control you, or do you control it? So if anything, that's something to be mindful of. Yes. So those qualities is awareness. One of the qualities is being aware of your own emotions, being aware of what may trigger your, being aware of what you feel like. Jealousy is coming to a head where it may be bad or may be challenging or overwhelming. there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim. And I have this in my book, and I can share this so that way if you want to use, you want to share it later. But it's related by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, where it says that where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that if Allah wants to place mercy upon his creation, he will place trials in their lives. Our trials, our hardships, and our challenges are surrounded by Allah's mercy. These challenges and trials and hardships, they're nothing but testing our what? Our faith and our trust in our Lord. And the things that we say that we're going to do. Didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, do you think that you will be able to say and not be tested?
Exactly.
These are going to be certain things that we're going to be tested upon. So if anything, being aware, being prepared, understanding what it is that you need to work on and actually do it. Understanding what your triggers are when it comes to jealousies. That is something else. And also ask yourself, if you have a problem with polygyny, why? Now, you answering the question is not to convince you to be, a polygynous situation, but it's for you to be more informed and educated about the practice within itself.
Yes, of course.
So education is definitely key.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So a question I wanted to ask you actually, we've been talking about obviously with some of the hadith as well that you quoted, mashallah, which obviously is important when it comes to, anything that we do in our religion to help us to do, to live our life successfully. But you mentioned in the beginning that, even before entering polygyny, you did a lot of research and study. So could you give us some of the, some of the research and study that you actually did do, which helps you kind of prepare mentally and understand the concept of polygyny and how to practice it?
Well, I would say nothing's better than actually talking to people who practice it. Because yes, I've read a few books, but what was the most beneficial, like part of my research, was actually talking to real women that were actually in it, to give you like the actual unadulterated, unfiltered, I would say it's still emotional, but just the ideas as to what to possibly expect. Because even when I did that, and I was very young, because I married when I married my husband, I was 17.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
So mashallah. So we were like right out of high school. We graduated together, and then 2 weeks later we were married. So alhamdulillah. I felt like, there was a lot of research to be done, but I also understood even at a young age that even though that may be their experiences, I don't have to take that on as mine. Meaning like some of the emotional parts, some of the things that didn't work for them. If anything, it made me learn and it gave me insight as to how it can possibly be, but that doesn't mean that that possibility doesn't have to be for me. So what I did was I spoke with a few sisters. I was in their their personal homes where I was able to see how it actually was structured and worked, and it worked out. Remember, even one of these families that I was talking to was my own in-laws. Like, my husband, he has 4 moms. So like I'm talking to each and every one of them, and they're giving me different insight to consider. Those are some of the really great things that was very helpful during our process. I would think for me, being able to really sit underneath people, because we didn't have coaches. If anything, they weren't necessarily coaching me. They were just they was informing me and giving me some insight. But I also realized that there wasn't any like support group. They kind of had to figure things out on their own. And in some way that was also a part of my journey as well, especially in the beginning stages. But the difference between me and them is I actually journaled. Sometimes people say journaling, sometimes it doesn't make any sense, to the people who don't like journaling. They say it doesn't make any sense. It's not helpful. Well, it was helpful for me in this aspect, because not only did it allow me to at least see my growth, for me to at least share my vulnerable and transparent moments, it also gave me the ability to see how I can take some of these things, how I learned and grew from these things, and how I can possibly help other people later on down the line, as far as, now when I'm actually someone who's assisting, advising, and coaching women through their emotional journeys and ups and downs of polygyny. So it was really beneficial. But I would definitely say being around people that are in it is helpful, or those who may have been in it, it can be helpful. And yes, sometimes there's going to be people who is going to tell you about their nightmares. There's going to be people that's going to tell you about how it's not, it wasn't beneficial for them. And it may not have been. And you still take that in as information, but it does not mean that that information applies to who you are and what you possibly can become. You just, if anything, you learn from their journey by knowing what to look for and what not to look for, what to tolerate, what not to tolerate, and what you want and what you don't want. But it doesn't mean that their situation is going to be yours, because a lot of times people, they carry on other people's fears and failed situations. And just because I say failed doesn't necessarily mean that that's a negative thing, because failure can be very beneficial. Definitely. Again, it teaches you lessons. It teaches you lessons. I always tell this to a few of my clients. Failure is not a foe. It's actually a friend. Because if you could see your failures, that's Allah's mercy.
Of course.
Because how many people out here to this day is out here doing things and failing and displeasing their Lord in disobedience, and they don't even know it, see it, feel it, or can recognize it. But when you can recognize your failed situations or the things that didn't work for you, that's a blessing within itself. And just see the lessons as far as what to do and what not to do. Again, Allah's mercy, being around the things that may be trials, hardships, and struggles. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillah, absolutely. Definitely, I agree with that, subhanAllah. Very, very important thing to highlight. I wanted to ask you, obviously, on that note, is polygyny something that is practiced a lot in, where you're living, like in your culture that you're coming from? You mentioned that you're coming from a non-Muslim background, but your husband's family is polygynous. So apart from his family, were there quite a few other sisters as well in the community involved in it as well, or?
There were a few, but back then, and we're talking about in the mid-90s, okay. They weren't as open and out there as much as I see it now.
Right. Okay.
So you had to kind of know them. They were underground, so to speak. But they were out there, but they were very quiet about it, for multiple reasons. One of the reasons being that they don't want, and some people to this day, they're the same way as well. They don't want the evil eye. Like, they like their family structure. They like to keep it private, and they don't want other people in their situation. And it's so understandable.
Definitely. Absolutely. I wanted to ask as well, on that note, about the qualities that you think a man, the kind of qualities you think is important for a man to have if he's in polygyny, and especially like from, your experience with your husband as well, and he's coming from a polygynous background. Would you say that kind of helped him being able to navigate as a man in this, situation?
Absolutely. Because he learned from watching his father. He learned from seeing how things were and how he did things. And he also learned what to do and what not to do for himself, as far as what would be best for his family, as he's building on his family. So alhamdulillah, it was definitely a big, big help. But that's not a required quality, of course. I would always say that it's really great when the men are able to be fair. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're going to have, a lot of times you see and you hear in our communities where it seems like the husband favors one wife over the other, or he doesn't know how to balance his fairness, because in reality, in some cases, sometimes he's being pulled from both ends, by the women who may be one who's in some ways fighting for his attention, his affection, his, and his heart. And sometimes that can be overwhelming, and sometimes they may sway one way or the other. But it's great to be able to have a firm, like, standing and ground, just being the leader of your family, as well as being fair and fearing your Lord. Fearing your Lord should be really number one.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that's another thing that's going to drive what you do, how you do it, with whom you do, with whom that may be with. And also, you know, it will weigh heavy on the fairness as far as the treatment amongst the wives and the families, because sometimes there's, you know, some people say, oh, well, he favors the first wife and she's emotional and she's this and she's that, he's going to go over there, or he's going to, you know, do this, that, and the fourth. And sometimes they do that. And then the second, or the incoming wife, because sometimes it's not always a second, it could be a third. But that incoming wife may feel left out, may feel as though that he's swaying her, you know, her way, because he's trying to be pacifying to her emotional adjusting. But he doesn't realize that that also needs his attention, and I guess, like, his attention or his want to be there, and him being fair by just also being there for her. Mm-hmm. And even though it sounds like, oh, this sounds crazy, why would any man want to deal with that? But it really isn't. Like, just like if you think about this, when a mother has her first child, right? All of her attention goes to that child. All of it, that child cries, she's going to pick that baby up every time. Just about every time. Mm-hmm. So that way the baby doesn't cry. And then sometimes you'll hear a mother or a grandmother or elder say, oh, you got to lay that baby down. He or she is going to be okay. That baby's going to be all right. Go ahead and do what you need to do for yourself. The baby's going to be fine. They might cry a little bit, but they'll be okay. And sometimes it's hard for the mom to do that. But once she actually does that, and she may hear the baby cry for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it may tear her up, but the baby eventually, maybe on that 15th minute, the baby is no longer crying. Mm-hmm. Maybe the baby fell asleep. Maybe the baby is preoccupied, you know, because in reality, that's their language of calling for someone to get them.
Yes.
You know, they want attention.
Yes, of course.
They want your attention. But once that mother does that, and she's like, oh, okay, he or she is, the baby's fine. Okay, I can do what I need to do. Mm-hmm. I can go shower now. You know, or I can just go, just sit down and just be to myself for a moment. I can give to me at this moment. And then she learns the next time if it happens, she gets a little bit, she adjusts to it. Like, not only is she adjusting to it, but guess what? So is that baby.
Of course.
That baby is adjusting and understanding that mommy's not going to be able to pick me up every time. Okay, and then they start to become, you know, they're able to preoccupy themselves. Sometimes they start playing with their fingers or their toes, their little toy, or they go to sleep. But they adjust as well. Now, the same thing can happen in those instances as far as when it comes to the balancing or the fairness of that man with that wife that is trying to get his attention. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned the first wife, but sometimes it might not be the first wife. It could be that incoming wife that may be the one that's trying to get his attention. He's catering to her. But nonetheless, whichever wife it is, you know, sometimes they may be pulling at you for that attention, but fair is fair. And he has to be able to be understanding that he has to put his foot down. That's why I said a firm grounding of leadership. Understanding that, you know, everybody's not going to like his lead at the time, because it's not turning towards what they want. But it's not about what we want, it's about what Allah wants at the end of the day. You know, it's about what may be best, you know, at that time. And if we trust and marry someone and pray that, you know, this person they want the best for themselves as well as for everybody that they're responsible for, meaning not just those women or that woman or wife or wives, but also those children that are involved that we don't talk too much about. But when he's able to do that, and when a woman sees that he's doing his best, like giving and being fair, even though it may not be always swaying towards her, she can't do nothing but respect it. Once she gets to a certain rationale, she'll be able to respect it a little bit more. Because she knows that he's not just looking out for all of them, but he's also looking out for his soul. Exactly. And we have to also be mindful as women or those wives that we want our husband to not be the one that's dragging. You know, we don't want to be the reason why he's dragging on Yawmul Qiyamah. Because we wanted him to be with us and only us, or give all of our time, and which turned him into having unfair tendencies and behaviors. Like, we have to also be mindful in all of the things that kind of falls into line. You know, it's not all about me. It's not always about us. I always say that when you're in a marriage, regardless if it's monogamy or polygyny, you turn that me into we. Like that M turns upside down to a W. You turn that me into we. It's a team. It's literally a team. And a motto, not a motto, but a saying that I like to say is, teamwork makes the team work.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if we're working together as a team, that work that we put in together makes this team work. Like, we are able to work collaboratively and successfully together. Alhamdulillah, mashallah. But yeah, so answer your question.
Alhamdulillah. No, that's perfect, mashallah. So on that note, like you mentioned a few times, obviously children as well. So in your kind of family, like, what is the relationship between the children, you know, of obviously the different wives? Do they get on with each other? Do they understand, you know, the concept of polygyny? You know, obviously according to their ages, because differently depending on their ages, they will have kind of a different understanding of marriage in general. Yeah, like how does that kind of work? Do they mix together? Are you living closely that, you know, they get to see each other on a regular basis?
Yes, they do. They definitely mix well together, like brothers and sisters, because they are brothers and sisters, and they see each other daily. They see each other every day, and they understand it. Like, they understand that they have 3 moms. They actually understand that they have more than 3 moms, because I do have some formal, 2 formal co-wives, but they are still my children's other moms.
Yes.
Like, I will never tell them that that's not their other mothers. When we see them, they know, you know, they still have moments where they do talk to them and stuff like that or whatever, and they understand that is their mom. So I would never take that away from them. But they understand that they do have other mothers, and they understand that we are in a polygynous family, and they're fine with that, and they're okay with it. They actually like that. I actually like it for our children too, because it allows them to be able to have different maternal relationships,
of course,
that may help them in other ways that the other mom, that their biological mom may not be able to connect or help them in. You know, I love that my daughter, like, I don't have any surviving sisters. So I don't know what it feels like as far as, like, you know, growing up with other girls and so on and so forth. And I just know about being the only girl, and my daughter is the only girl. And, you know, she has her moments, and we could connect on that level. But then when it comes to other things, she's able to connect with her other mom, one of her other moms, because she has multiple sisters. My other co-wife, she doesn't have any sisters. So she's able to connect with her other mom in that aspect, as far as when it comes to being around other girls, and how, you know, as far as making friends and this, that, and the fourth, the do's, the don'ts, and, you know, all that other good stuff. Just like I am a real estate investor on top of being the co-wife coach. And one of our sons, mashallah. So one of our sons, my co-wife biological son, but that's still my son too. He was interested in real estate. So when I would go to closings and showings and things like that, that would be time where he and I would spend together, and I'm showing him about what it takes, and, you know, he's learning and this, that, and the fourth, and we have that, you know, that connection in that area. where it's helpful. And at the same time, he's learning. And if he has any questions, he knows he can call on me on that, this, that, and the fourth. So I just think that it allows them to be a little bit more well-rounded. Being as though that we all live in the same area, basically on the same street. 3 different homes, but on the same street. So they see each other every day. They're in and out of houses. And we all have each other's keys. So it's just like, they already know. They come in, it's not like, oh, it's a guest. No, that's their brother, that's their sister, those are my children. At the end of the day, alhamdulillah. And it's been a real benefit for us and for them in that aspect. And one of the reasons why it's like that is because we were intentional, but most importantly, our husband was very intentional as far as how he wanted his family to be structured.
Yes.
So I guess going back into like one of your earlier questions as far as like qualities, is just being intentional, not just jumping into it with no intentional plan.
Exactly.
Like being able to have an intentional plan as to how you want your family to be structured is very important, because it gives you a blueprint as to how you may navigate and move and what it is that you want from your family. Like he's talked to us before, even certain things came about where he wanted what he share, what he expects and what he wants from, as far as for his family. Like fitna is not an option. That's one of his expectations. Fitna is not an option as far as amongst the wives. And if it's a problem, then talk it out like women, like mature women.
Exactly.
And like, and move on, because we have a family to grow and raise. Like these children are growing up every day. We have a family to grow and raise. They're also watching us. But most importantly, we want to make sure that we're always on the better end of just serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all that we do. And we know obviously fitna is not something that is pleasing to our Lord. So why would it be something that we would want to cultivate and grow within our family structure, especially if we know that, when it comes to polygyny, that has always been like an issue amongst the women. So being as though that him being, I guess, intentional in that aspect, that was something that he would, he placed on the table, made it very clear that that's not something that he wants to experience in his family. And if it's an issue, again, we work it out. We don't sit on things and let it fester into something ugly, and that could be, obviously, injuring to the family as far as, people talking about each other and, growing apart. We don't want that. So alhamdulillah for that.
And that happens in so many families. I mean, even without the polygyny itself, subhanAllah. I'm glad you touched on that aspect as well, because I think this is one of the things that, and I'm trying to actually get to be able to talk to some sisters who have grown up in polygyny so that I can get their kind of take and perspective on it. Because what happens, obviously, like, when we hear, as I said, a lot of nightmare stories about polygyny, and one of the negative things that usually comes up is, the treatment of the children and how it can be traumatic for them, because maybe the father is favoring a particular wife or a particular set of children and things like that. But, I mean, realistically, that could happen obviously without polygyny as well, and it does happen without polygyny, but then obviously polygyny is going to add another layer of complexity to those kind of issues as well. So it's very important, as you said, for somebody like your husband, as being the leader of this family, to be intentional about his family structure, knowing exactly how he wants his family to run from the beginning, so that these kind of inner conflicts that can occur within families naturally can be easily dealt with and, correctly dealt with, obviously, so that, there aren't grudges and, there's a nice flow and cohesion within, the family and amongst the children as well. So does your husband get to obviously spend a lot of time with the kids, like, kind of evenly as well?
Yeah, he definitely does get a chance to spend time with the children. The children is like, they flow, so they see him daily. When I say they flow, meaning they flow throughout the homes. So they see him on a daily basis. I will say that sometimes when it is someone's night and maybe some of the children are over there, he wants to be mindful as far as how his time is spent with the children that may be in of that house.
Yes.
And so he doesn't want to take too much away. Like if it seems like if you got a younger child, the youngest, they always want to be, in dad's face or, right there talking this, that, and the fourth. And it's definitely nothing wrong with that. But if he's trying to connect with the teens and this, that, and the fourth or whatever, he may say, oh, okay, it's time for you to go. They call me Mimi. So, okay, it's time for you to go to Mimi's house. She might have like some snacks or something like that for you or whatever. So he'll deal with it in that aspect, but then spend time with them later on in the day when he sees them, or later on at that house, later on in the week at that house where he's able to give them even more time that's required for them to tell him all the 10 billion stories and show all the different drawings and so on and so forth. That's needed. So it's done, but it's done with intentions of balance. Not to sit here and say that it is perfect, because sometimes there's moments where the little one wants his time, and maybe he might not have got enough time this week, this, that, and the fourth or whatever. But we're mindful of it all nonetheless, and nobody's perfect, not even moms. Like as far as with mothering, you try to give your best as far as time or intention towards whomever, but sometimes certain things may get in the way, or your time may be a little tight in some areas where you might have to push it to another time, where it may that child may be sad in that moment, but they will appreciate it later on when you actually do sit down and have time for them and be like, oh, okay, now I remember you have such and such. Like just before our interview, our 10-year-old, he does like video editing. So he's like, he's excited to show me that, and I'm surprised and I'm surprised he didn't try to come and knock on my door while we're doing this. But but I told him before, I was like, listen, I have a meeting coming up soon, so you're gonna have to show me later. I can't look at it or right at this moment. But when I'm finished, if I don't see it tonight, then inshallah I'll see it in the morning. So just talking to them in a way where you're able to at least acknowledge what they're trying to do, but also show them that patience as well, and everything is not going to come at the time where they want it to happen. Is also learning lessons too. But it's definitely not an easy task, but it's not as hard as we think it may be. It's just a matter of intentional balancing. And you hear me say that word so much because nothing happens exactly the way that we want it to, but at least our intentions are there to do certain things as best as we can, as individuals, as servants unto Allah, as wives, as a husband, as parents, and with the hopes, I should say, of everything being beneficial to everyone, especially the children, later on. And initially, when you were talking about the children, I was ready to call my daughter in here to even just give her, her part, because she's a teenager, and I think she's on a platform where she shared, like, she was like, I wouldn't mind polygyny because, if it's anything like my mom's, then I wouldn't mind it at all, because she sees the work that we put in. She sees the sisterhood. She sees the respect. She sees the cordialness. She sees the friendships, that we actually had built. It didn't happen overnight, but it was definitely something that has been built over time, mashallah.
Mashallah. So I wanted to ask a little bit about your family, okay? Because obviously we're both reverts, I take it. So coming from a non-Muslim background, how did your family kind of adjust to you being in polygyny, and like were they supportive at all? Did they have kind of were they coming from a perspective where they could understand it? Because I mean, I know when it comes to my mum, anytime the subject of polygyny comes up, she just doesn't get it. Okay, so it's like, and how many times I try to kind of explain it in like even simple terms. And this is not unusual. There's a lot of women in general, they can't understand. Obviously, my mom's not Muslim as well, so from that element, there's no kind of obligation for her to really accept it in any fashion. But the main reason why she doesn't understand polygyny is from the aspect of love, so and I think that's most people's issue. They will say things like, well, how can a man love more than one woman, and how can he really show that in a marriage, basically. Because I think even in the Bible, for Christians, obviously, when they see the polygyny that's practiced in the Bible as well, you do see a lot of imbalance. You know, even with the prophets that are mentioned in the Bible, when they have more than one wife, it's like it seems very clear that there's one preferred wife over other wives. You know, even with the story of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam in the Bible, it's shown that his mother, you know, had a different mother from his 12 brothers. So it was him and his brother Benjamin, and then they had the same mum, which is the wife that his father had originally wanted to marry, but was tricked into marrying another woman, and then he subsequently then married the woman of his choice later. So, you know, it kind of shows these kind of elements where, you know, you're seeing that, well, yeah, they practiced polygyny, but, you know, there was only one true woman that they loved. So, you know, this is kind of another excuse that is given almost to show that polygyny is something that shouldn't be practiced now. It can't really be practiced, because how can a man love, you know, more than one woman? So if you could talk a little bit about that, inshallah.
Well, to answer your first question, or the first thing that you mentioned, was my family. My family, being as though, again, they're non-Muslim. Let's talk about my mom. My mom was someone that I spoke to first. And when I told her about it, she asked a few questions, and she was like, are you fine with it? Are you happy? Will you still be taken care of? And when I answered yes, she said, well, listen, that is your business. That is your life. If you're happy with it, then I am fine with it. It's not like I have to live it, and I support you in it nonetheless. And I even had, like, on my YouTube channel, I think even on my Instagram page, I have where I literally did a live with my mom. And no, I did it was a radio interview. It was a radio interview, and my mom was talking to the producers at the end. Mm-hmm. And she didn't know I was recording her. She did not know I was recording the conversation. And that was one of the first times where where I heard her share how she felt. Now, I think that's on my Instagram. On YouTube, I did a live, and I was recording it, and she shared. My mother, she looks at my co-wives as her daughters. She looks at all of the children as her grandchildren, and she loves our husband. So it's just, and my mom is not Muslim, but she's also a person that she knows that if it's our 27th year anniversary coming up, my mom will write a whole dua out. She will look up on on Google, and see how to say alhamdulillah, how to spell mashallah, and barakallah, and all these different things, and she'll text it to my husband and I, and I'm like, Mom, you like texting out a whole dua. I can say assalamu alaikum, she gives me the commands, I can talk to her as if like she's Muslim, and she gets it, she understands it, and she's accepting of it. May Allah got into that, which is right. I mean. So, my dad, on the other hand, was a different story. And in the beginning, he was not for it, because I'm his daughter. I'm his only daughter. Mm-hmm. And he didn't understand it, and he had to be able to see it. He had to see me and see that I was really happy and I was really taken care of, and that I really love my family, like how my family is structured. And he felt a certain type of way because of his personal life and some of the decisions that he'd done. A man who does, you always say that, when a man has a daughter, it may change him, because now, he may change some of the things that he do because now he has a daughter, and he would not want certain things to happen to her that maybe he himself used to or may have practiced once upon a time. So, read between the lines in that. But, so it was difficult for him to see it because he didn't see it as polygyny. He saw it as something else. Yeah. But when he saw that it is a polygynous situation, it is not an infidelity type situation, or I'm being, taken advantage of, and this, that, and the fourth, and I'm being taken care of, and we're all being taken care of, and we're all happy. He was able to see things differently, where now, alhamdulillah, I mean, my children, they see him as Pop, and he sees my co-wives, he sees them as my family. Mm-hmm. He might not go to as well. He sometimes he'll play around like, yeah, those my daughters, but he's not like my mom. She's not like my mom. My mom, I know my mom really feels that. whereas my dad, he had to grow to that.
Yeah.
He had to grow to that. It wasn't something that was natural for him. But outside of that, all my other family members, they're fine. I mean, I share with them, but I mean, how they feel is how they feel. That's not really a concern of mine. And I live my life out loud. I don't hide, that I'm a polygynist, in a polygynous situation. I go to some of my family members' houses, and I remember this. I was at a table, and my aunt and all of like the women, that was there at that time. We had a family dinner. And they were all sitting at a table, and they asked me to sit down, and I'm like, oh boy, what's going on? And this is when my late grandmother was alive, and that was my girlfriend. My grandma, that was my girl. So my mom was at that table, my grandmother, my aunt, and a few cousins, and maybe one other aunt was there. And my aunt, she said, oh, so I heard that you in polygamy. Your husband has more than one wife now, huh? How do you feel about that? I said, I feel fine. I feel great. I love my family. And that wasn't what she was expecting, because sometimes, people who don't understand, or they look for drama, they want to draw the drama. So, and she was like, oh, really? You don't have a problem with that? Nope, not at all. And she was like, well, what if he marries another one? Okay, that's his business. If he can take care of it, then so be it. And then my grandmother, I didn't expect this, but my grandmother chimed in. She said, all them girls is beautiful. Now, I come from Southern, Baptist church people, so even though I live in the city, I live in the north, but my family is from the south. So my grandma, she may speak with a little drawl. And she said, all them girls is just beautiful. Not leave them alone. But that was her demeanor. Yes. Like she was trying to protect me.
Yeah.
And, like I've seen nothing but good from her and all those kids. And she loved them kids. And my mom chimed in. And I just felt protected. I said, alhamdulillah. I felt protected in that moment as far as with other family members who try to kind of like pick at it and kind of make it something that it wasn't, or if they think that they were protecting me, they were trying to belittle it, and belittle me, in a sophisticated way. But I was like, no, I wasn't for it. And my grandma and my mom on that day, I'll never forget, they had my back, and it was a beautiful situation. And when I go around my family, if I have all of my children, they know those are my kids. And if they got a problem with it, they don't share it to me. They talk about me behind my back. That's okay. I can use those blessings.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, so what about when people ask you about love and, your husband loving you, or maybe sometimes, maybe, I don't know, maybe sisters have said to you, maybe sometimes that maybe you don't love your husband because you didn't mind him getting another wife. What kind of responses do you give to such questions?
Well, I mean, love is great, but I respect my husband. I love him. Don't get it twisted. Now, I'm brown, and I'm a brown skin girl, but I will blush over that man. I mean, I've been blushing over that man since 1996. But it's deeper than love. Like, love is cool, but it's a certain sense of respect and honoring, not of him, but honoring of the marriage, and understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not place nothing on you that is not something that you can't handle. And I really believe that. I honestly believe that to be true. And the love is going to be fine, but guess what? You can love somebody, but I love and like him. Like, I love him and I like him.
Yes.
A lot of people don't understand what that means. A lot of people, and that might go over some people's head, but I actually love him and I like him. I still like being around him.
Yes.
I still feel young and giddy around him. So it's more than just love. It's a connection. Like, okay, that love is cute, but do you have a connection? Because I'm aiming for quality, longevity within my marriage. How do you get that? Love is one of the aspects, but that is not the only way, and that's not even the main thing. Respect, connecting, understanding, and actually being someone's peace and him being your peace, and understanding that there's going to be some things that you're going to have to learn about him, and he's going to have to learn about some things about you, and the both of you are honoring and supporting one another in some of those areas where you may fall or maybe weaken. It's a support system. It's a literal support system. Yes, so love is great, but it's not the main thing that holds the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
People think that that's the case, but take it from an OG, and I say this in the best of ways, and I take it from an OG or someone has at least had a little bit of time invested in a marriage. Love is definitely not the main thing that can carry and support your marriage towards a beautiful, quality, connected marriage that has longevity ahead of it. So when we understand that, when we stop trying to live the fantasy and fairy tale lives of what you see on TV, and really try to connect with your partner in the best of ways, that's when you'll understand that love is one aspect, but it's so many other connective parts that gives you that like enlightened quality connected relationship within your marriage. Okay. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, mashallah. Because it's interesting while you were saying that, I was thinking about, sometimes you hear couples, for example, I don't know, like if this happens really in real life, but I'm assuming it does. But some movies you'll watch and you'll hear like people say things like, oh well, a couple will have gotten divorced, for example, and they'll say, oh, well, we really love each other, but, we're just not right together. And you just think, well, how does that make any sense? If you say you love each other, then surely, like, this is the person that you should be doing your best endeavors to actually make things work. So you need to bring more to the table than just saying that you love them, but actually actively, putting in effort to, work through whatever issues that you have, So, it just made me kind of think about that. So when you have these other elements that you mentioned, like respect and that connecting and understanding each other and openly willingness to like learn about each other as you grow, like in your marriage together, because obviously like people change over time as well, and situations can change people too, and like, have an impact on, how people behave and, carry on. And do you know what I mean? There's different things that come about in life which is going to have an impact on people's behavior too. So it's like, if you don't have that level of understanding and willingness to kind of even have patience, because you need a lot of patience obviously in a marriage as well with the other person, then then I suppose that the love wouldn't be enough, and that's what happens with some of these couples, I suppose you could say, when they say that they love somebody but they're not working, so it's that element where you need to actually put a lot of effort in as well.
Right, absolutely. And you said something too, as far as with change, over time people change. And a lot of times people get stuck and they don't want to change. They may want to grow, but they really don't want to change. And when they see that no change happens, then nothing changes. If a person does not change within a relationship, then that relationship stays the same. And I don't want the same relationship. I don't want to have the same first year again. Like as far as in my now almost 30 years of marriage. You want to continuously evolve. And I'll never forget this. Alhamdulillah, if you don't know this by now, my husband is my best friend. He's one of my best friends, because one of my co-wives is my other best friend too. And my other co-wife, she's my friend. That's my sister. But why I say that one is my best friend and one is my sister. But I remember him saying early on when we had our first child, and he said that be prepared, because one part of you is about to die and another part is about to show face or to grow into or to become alive. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And we're in our 20s. So I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? So he was like, no, the person, the Mecca who you were before having a child, before becoming a mother, before carrying a baby, is no longer going to be the person after you actually have that baby. You're becoming another version of yourself. you're evolving into another part of your, your womanhood. And when he said that, I was like, wow. And it was so funny because we were married for 7 years before we had our first child.
Oh, no.
So it was like, it was joyful. It was enjoyable to be able to get to know who you were in those first 7 years. And now I'm going to get a chance to know another part of you as, Mecca the mother, Mecca the wife. He realized that I had a really strong grip when I was in labor. So, the person who bear pain, the person who actually had my child, the person who is supportive of my moves and this, that, and the fourth in other ways and other aspects of my life, and how that looks different. And that's going to, so don't try to look back. And I didn't listen to that because there was a lot of different areas of my life after that where I tried to chase yesteryears, like, the youthful Mecca, the Mecca before having a baby, or the Mecca right after having a baby, and so on and so forth, especially after having a second one, expecting everything to be exactly the same when I was shown that everything was definitely not the same and it wasn't going to be the same. But I get it. Like, that was my 20s and my 30s. I started to figure it out, but I so understand now in my 40s, alhamdulillah. And I just want to at least share that, like, change is expected. Expect change. Do not go into a situation thinking that everything is always going to be the same, or you want that old thing back, as some people would say. You don't want the older version of you. You want a renewed version of yourself. Something that shows growth, something that shows experience, something that has knowledge that you didn't have before. You want to be able to elevate. And this is not just for the women. This is for everybody. This is a human thing. Like, exactly. So understanding that change does come. So, and I say this also in a polygynous aspect, don't be surprised when that man who told you that he didn't want polygyny in the beginning now tell you years later that this is something that he's interested in. You don't know what shifted in him that may have brought that up. But he didn't deceive you. Don't think that he's deceiving you. Don't think that he lied to you, because anything can happen. You can change. Sometimes we fail to forget as women, certain things that we didn't want in our life, now we want in our life later on and years later. So the same thing can obviously happen with them, and we should be open to at least receiving that and being open to having the discussion when and if that does come upon a discussion that is expressed within that between those two married people.
Absolutely. SubhanAllah. So, you talked a little bit about your work earlier on. So I wanted to ask you the question because obviously people, one of the issues that I mentioned to you before we even started recording actually was in the UK, for example, one of the nightmare stories that happens with regards to polygyny, that is that, in the UK, for example, we have a benefit system there. So if a woman is single, for example, and she has children, the government support her financially. They, give her like money for, her maintenance, like to pay her bills, all this kind of thing, or her rent and stuff like that. So a woman can basically live, okay, without having a man in her life, or without her working herself most of the time. Okay, so obviously there's some shifts in that, because sometimes single mothers still have to work because there's a particular age that your child will get to where the mothers are encouraged or like basically made that they have to go and look for jobs, for example. So what's happening sometimes in the UK, for example, is that brothers who are interested in doing the sunnah of polygyny, as they usually describe it, they will take on subsequent wives and not financially provide for them, while those wives are living in a council, a council-run property, meaning that their bills are being, or their rent is being paid by the government. They're having that government support, and the men themselves aren't actually providing for them as they would maybe their first wife, for example. So, this is obviously causing some problems and negative view of polygyny itself, because it's seen as something like, well, oh, the first wife is getting a priority here, and then the subsequent wives, they're just having to kind of sacrifice their God-given rights or to being provided for, and other things as well, that, so that they can just be in a marriage, and when they get children, then maybe the children aren't, getting their rights either. So, in your situation, what's the situation there? I understand that you have a job. Do your co-wives work as well? Is that your main source of, how you're maintaining yourself, or is it still like your husband providing your basic needs for, for all of the family, and, your money that you make is your own kind of separate something because that's what you're interested in? Give us some, inshallah, and expand on that.
Well, I do have businesses, and in the aspect that don't necessarily have a job. I don't look at them as like jobs. And my co-wives, they have businesses as well. Now, he is responsible for all of our expenses. So that doesn't change anything, and what we make is what we make.
Alhamdulillah.
We do what we want to do with it. If we want to actually take part on certain things, then that's our business, and it's we can do it with our money. Whether it's take part on certain things inside of the house, whether it's take part on certain things that may deal with our parents. Where because two of us, we have our mother. One of my other co-wives, her mother has passed, but if we want to do something for our parents, where I might want to do something for my mom or my dad, maybe I want to take them shopping, maybe I want to pay for their bills, maybe I want to, I have my own expenses that I actually, have to pay for outside of, the things that he takes care of, like my car or whatever. And when I say my car, I'm talking about gas, gas money and this, that, and the fourth, so my own little things, however I want to do with it is what I choose to do with it. And we all have, whether we want to contribute to the house, and there's been times where, yes, I may want to help pay a bill or two. And I also look at that and know that that's a help. And that is also, what do we also consider that to be? Let me quiz you on this, because I don't want to do all this. Absolutely. It is also a form of sadaqah. So why not? If you're going to give sadaqah, why not give sadaqah to your family, and then to your home. So alhamdulillah. So it's a little different as far as here, and everybody has different dynamics for whatever their reasons. I try not to get too much into people's personal dynamics, because they have their own reasons as to why they do it. I do, however, always mention to the women to make sure that, if for some reason, if you choose to take responsibility and quote unquote, waive your rights, as some people would say here, is it for a temporary time? Is this for the longevity of your marriage? Like, and if we're waiving rights, do you know why? Did you ask the questions? Do we have intentions on taking on those responsibilities sometime soon? This and the fourth. It's always good to have a reason or a knowing as to why or what his plans are, as far as with being responsible for you, because you are his responsibility. Those children, in some aspect, especially if those are his children, and even if they're not his children, if he's taken that upon himself, as far as they're part of you, they're part of your household, so he has some responsibility to them. What is his plan? What is his intentional plan? Like, what is his purpose and what is his plan? Always ask those questions. So that way you have a solid idea as far as knowing what you're getting yourself into before you make decisions to move forward or not.
Absolutely. And you just kind of answered my next question, because I was going to ask you, what advice would you give to sisters who are considering entering into polygyny? So, the points that you mentioned there are really, really good and important. Is there anything else that you would add to that?
Yeah, ask as many questions as possible outside of the financial part about his behavior? What is his intentions as far as how is he going to navigate through this polygynous family, and with nights and with financing, with travel, with, his family, as far as, how is he introducing you to his actual family? What is his intentions as far as on a polygynous family? Like, is it going to be unified or is it separate? Like, ask all these questions, and it's so funny because I literally put together a questionnaire for sisters that don't know what to ask. It's ridiculously good, let me say it that way. But it's really been well received, because when I say are you familiar with the term 21 questions, or is it 21 questions or 20 questions?
You mean like asking 20 questions, that kind of term?
Yes. So it started off like that, and then I literally wrote out 105 questions. It's supposed to be 21 questions, but it turned out to be 105 questions. And it's literally like something where, like, you ask let me see if I can pull it up, because I can even read some of the questions to you.
Oh, great.
It's literally like questions. Yes, I want to be able to share this with you. Some of the questions that you would think, like, wow, did you really ask that? Or is this, I never thought to ask this. Okay, hold on. I'm just trying to pull it up.
So is this for marriage in general, or specifically for polygyny?
It's for polygyny, and you can use it for marriage as well, but it's really specifically for polygyny. Like, if you use it for anything outside of polygyny, you would just have to reword a few things. Okay, but it's definitely, and I'll explain to you some of the things that you can kind of switch up. Here it is. Okay. Let's see if I go here. Okay. Okay, so one of the questions may be, matter of fact, pick a number between 1 and 105. I'll let you pick the number and I'll read the question.
99.
Oh, wow. Okay, so 99. Question 99 is, what are some pet peeves that you have that are deal breakers? Now, that's obviously a question that's across the board. It can be across the board for polygyny, monogamy, anything, that you can ask as far as you're courting. What are some of your pet peeves that are deal breakers? Because I need to know that, because if some of your pet peeves might be some of the things that I might do based off of habit or character.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's just like, I need to know that before I go into this particular situation out the hard way. One other, let's pick 3 questions, 3 for the students. So go ahead, pick number 2.
27.
Okay, let's scroll number 27. And it says, ooh, this is a good one. What do you have in mind for scheduling of nights?
Okay.
This is something that needs to be known. It's typical. This is something that needs to be known, because you want to know, like, what is your intentions? Are you going to be doing every other night? Is it every 2 nights? Is it every 3 nights? Is it every other week? Like, how are we doing this? And especially depending on the dynamics of the family, as far as, is it going to be 2 wives in total, 3 wives in total, 4 wives in total, which determines how the scheduling is going to be. And on top of that, sometimes it may even be determined by where the wives are, because maybe they're not in the same state, city, or country.
Exactly.
So how does that work? You need to know something. You need to have an understanding of how that's actually going to be structured. And I would even add to this question, is this your intentional long-term schedule, or will it be changing up from time to time? Will you be changing it up from time to time? I would even add that to it. And go ahead and pick your last number.
Okay, I'll go for 18.
Number 18. Let me scroll. Okay. Woo-hoo. Can you afford to add an additional wife financially, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically? Look at you picking all the good questions.
MashaAllah.
Yes. So, yeah, can you afford this? Like, is this something that you can afford? Like, is this something that you can afford? And a lot of times people think of the money. He might be able to have the financial stability, but does he have the emotional stability? Can he afford you emotionally? Can he afford you spiritually and even physically? And physically is not always sexually. I'm going to need people to stop thinking that's the first thing when it comes to polygyny.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all things to consider. These are definitely all things to consider. And I'm going to add a bonus. I'm going to choose one randomly. I'm going to say, what's one of my numbers? I'm going to say, I'm going to pick 67. All right. So let me see. Scroll. Where's number 67? Are you financially stable? Are you financially stable is number 67. And these are typical questions that I think that was easy. That kind of applies to what we just talked about. Yeah. And let me see. No, this is a good question. I'm going to choose another one because that was dealing with finances, and yours actually dealt with this. But this one is a good one. It says, if your wives were in a heated argument, how would you intervene? Mm-hmm. These are some of the questions that you want to be able to know. You want to ask him that. You don't want to find out the hard way that he's not going to be intervening, or how is he going to how does he want things to actually be dealt with, or is he going to be in the middle, or is he going to be that person that's in the background and he's going to let y'all figure it out yourselves and nothing happens and he's not doing anything, and then next thing you know, one person is actually, kind of in a situation. You want type of questions. Mm-hmm. Another one is, what makes you angry and upset? You want to know that from one another. Yes, you want to know what makes this person angry and upset. Like those are questions that I'm quite sure some people may ask, but a lot of people don't ask because they're in the midst of it just being new and nice and pretty and cute and stuff like that. But no, ask those important questions at the table.
Exactly.
At the table. And again, we just named that was like 5 questions? Mm-hmm. 6 questions from 105. There's still 90. There's still 99 other questions that can be asked to be able to give you a confident feeling as to whether you want to move forward with this person or no, thank you. I'm good. I think I'm going to decline. In order for you to avoid heartache, and all of the other possible negative things that may come along with the situation that may, or I should say hurtful or painful or stressful, overwhelming, feelings that may come with a situation that did not work. But even if that does happen and you feel all those feelings, still know that, there's still lessons in it and what to do and what not to do next time going around, just in marriage in general, or even if you was to give polygyny a try again. Yes. So, but it's always good to be able to have those questions and know exactly what you want and know what you want to ask, and ask them. Don't be afraid. The courting process is your time to win or lose. Mm-hmm. If you want to win, you're going to be prepared. If you don't want to win, then you won't be prepared. Exactly. Simple as that.
And that's the thing. I think it sounds like this list of questions is a list that every man should have and be able to confidently answer. This is, especially for those who say they want to practice the sunnah of polygyny. Because I think this is one of the issues with some brothers is that, the sunnah is there to be practiced, is there to be followed and implemented. Like, we have sunnahs of prayer, we have sunnahs of fasting, subhanAllah. But, with polygyny, this is a sunnah which involves bringing another person into your life, and having a burden of responsibility over them, and that person, has to give you certain rights as well. So it's not as simple as just taking on any other sunnah. So we have to, men need to really bear this in mind, I think, because sometimes they talk about polygyny as a sunnah almost like it's something just light, I'll just do the sunnah of polygyny, and if it doesn't work out, or if I feel like I'm struggling, then it's just like, oh well, it's okay because I've got my first wife, as long as I keep my first wife. And if the first wife isn't happy, for example, he'll divorce the other wife that that joins, and it's like this isn't really how it's supposed to be. It's not like as simple as that, subhanAllah. They need to think a lot more deeply into, as you said, be more intentional about what they're going to do before just taking it on as something, like any other sunnah that they would do, personally for themselves, between just them and Allah, because it involves another individual.
Can I say this?
Mm-hmm.
and I want this message to be clear.
Yes.
And well heard to everybody, but especially the brothers out there. Women are not disposable.
Exactly.
Regardless if you're in polygyny or monogamy, women are not disposable. We are not something that you just throw away because you don't know how to handle it.
Exactly.
We are not something to be toyed with. We have emotions. When those women, when we as women, we go with those men and marry those men and actually be, connected to those men emotionally, intimately, psychologically, physically, religiously, and even spiritually, we are praying and trusting that you will take the best of care of us.
Exactly.
Not for you to throw us in the trash like we are a banana peel that you don't want or that's in your way. Like, no, that's not how it goes. And best believe you're going to have to answer for that when you treat women like that. You wouldn't want nobody treating your daughter like that. You wouldn't want nobody treating your mama like that. You wouldn't want nobody treating your grandma like that. You wouldn't want nobody treating your auntie like that. So don't treat the other women that you take in your care as responsible, as a responsible party, as being their husband, whether they're wife 2, 3, or 4, or even number 1. Do not act as if we don't care, we don't have feelings, or we'll get over it. You say that now, but trust and believe you're going to have to answer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you don't want no one, trust me, if you don't want no one treating your family like that, you don't want to put that energy out there as if it's okay, because Allah will test you.
Exactly.
Allah will test you. So be the best. Be the best of servants. And first and foremost, fear your Lord. If you cannot treat them kindly and justly, the best you can do is to leave them carefully and kindly with the fear of your Lord. Not just throwing them away or throwing them aside. Before you even take them upon your family, ask yourself the question, am I qualified to even do this?
Exactly.
Can I lead? Can I take on this responsibility? Like, come on. I'm tired. I am tired of seeing my sisters' hearts bleed and cry. I talk to thousands of women. I've talked to thousands of women for the past, 19, almost 20 years. Privately, before I was online and on social media, and currently. I talk to the women in these communities. I talk to the women in your communities. And don't think just because I'm here in the U.S. I talk to women all across the globe. And they're hurting because of the lack of fear and the lack of leadership that goes on within these families. We have to do better. You guys have to do better. The men have to do better. The men have to do better. But women in general, but especially in polygyny, because I see it a lot, and also in monogamy, we are not disposable.
Sister. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I had to say that.
No, absolutely. It has to be said, because the reality is I personally, I see it as a lack of manhood for a man to be able to just, if he feels that he can just throw away his responsibilities like that and not even take a second glance back, not take care of them, subhanAllah, that it's ridiculous, because a man needs to be adaptable. He needs to be able to protect and, preside, take care of his family, take that responsibility, and, as you said, leadership. And if you just, how can you be leading? It's like a shepherd. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that each of us are shepherds, and we are responsible for our flock. And the man is responsible for his family, and he's going to be asked about them. And the woman is responsible over her children and her household. She's going to be asked about them. So, as a mother, nobody respects women who just dump their children. So why do some men think that it's okay for them to just, this is getting too hard for me, so let me just khalas, finish. I'll just, I'm just going to skip out of here. And then, you're struggling as a father or as a husband in a marriage, but if you leave your wife and you leave children, what happens? You've left them in the same situation, even worse, and the woman still has to, bear the burden and get on with it as well. So are you better together, or are you going to be better, one person by themselves? You have to work at things. This is part of life. Like you said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to test all of us. If you don't accept the test that you're given now, you'll be given a test later on, and it will be a greater test even, because it's going to be the one that is replacing the test that you're supposed to in the beginning, that you failed to actually take on and accept because you gave up your responsibilities. And, and that one might be a lot harder for you to even bear as well. SubhanAllah. So people need to really reflect and think about these things, inshallah.
Can I just add to this? Yeah. I want to add to this also, that's maybe sometimes, I'm not saying all, but this could be also one of the reasons why a lot of men do it secretly. Mm-hmm. Because no one can hold them accountable for when they actually walk away.
Exactly. And that's just wrong.
Absolutely. Accountability, listen, no one's holding them accountable, but best believe Allah is the all-seeing, the all-knowing, and the all-hearing. He will hold you accountable some way, one way or the other, whether it's here or in the hereafter. Exactly. But trust and believe, rectify your situations. Do not walk away. If you can't hold yourself accountable, or if you think that you're getting away with something, then trust me, Allah has something else. Definitely has something else in store. Or just be mindful that you will be held accountable one way or the other.
Alhamdulillah. So that answers my final question, which was, what do you think is important for men to understand when they think about entering polygyny? I don't know if you want to add anything else to that.
That accountability part is key. And so is the leadership. If you can't lead, if you can't be fair, if you can't actually, hold it together, or at least make the attempts to hold it together and reach out for help, because that's another thing. Men, they don't always allow themselves to reach out to other brothers that may be able to advise them.
Exactly.
Because they feel so that it may test their manhood or whatever. No, or may make them look like they're weak. No, it's actually showing how strong you are. Because for the person that says that they don't know, or that I need help, is actually stronger than the person that doesn't say anything and they try to do it and they can't do it, but they want to make it look like they know what they're doing, at least up until when they fail. But no, it's nothing wrong with raising your hand or stepping up and saying, I need somebody to help me. Understand that actually shows a strong part of your leadership, and a role, as far as, at least to my understanding. Now, I come from a family full of men, not to mention that, my husband also does the same work. But for the men, of course.
That's really good.
But I would definitely say, alhamdulillah, but it's really important to have a sense of accountability, which is one of the reasons why the walima is always important. When you make that announcement to the public, it's not just for everybody to know, to know that you're married, but also if for some reason, if it doesn't work out, there's certain steps that we take, mediation and so on and so forth, certain things that may be helpful, or at least hold you accountable to the responsibilities. Other people know that your responsibility, but most importantly, again, like I said before, Allah knows that you're supposed to be responsible for this particular situation. And if you hold no responsibility and you don't care about being accountable, and you walk away, as if you have nothing to do with it, as if you were never attached to it, trust and believe that the act is still attached to you. And you will have to, in one way, shape, or form, you will have to answer for that. So be mindful. To those who haven't tried, be mindful, that there's definitely something to consider as far as making sure that you're able to at least step up in that manner. And if you feel as though that you can't, then it may be best that you think about it a little bit more, research it a little bit more, talk to a few people to be able to kind of tighten up your intentional plan if you choose to move forward later on in the future. But it's no rush, because you rather get it done later in the right way, in the correct manner, where it's beneficial to you in the end, opposed to jumping right into it, failing, and it actually being a detriment to you in the end because you didn't know how to handle the situation or approach it or even step away from it correctly in the eyes of Allah at the end of the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Alhamdulillah. Barakallah feekum, sister. It's been amazing talking to you. And obviously you are a coach as well. So how can other sisters get in contact with you for advice about marriage and polygyny in general?
Well, definitely. You can check. You can always go to my website, thecowifecoach.com, where you can schedule a call. There we also have a private online community there where we have tons of videos and different things and events that we have over there privately for the women and the women only in that area. And then on top of that, you can find me on Instagram as well as Facebook under the Co-Wife Coach, or Mecca the Co-Wife Coach on Facebook, where I have some videos where it's either live videos or some reels that are kind of like entertaining but educational in some end. And I always say read the captions. Don't just watch the videos, because a lot of the good stuff is inside of the captions. So reading is fundamental, as I like to say, from a movie. It's a quote from a movie. Reading is definitely fundamental. Read those captions, and you can also reach me in the DM or as far as in Instagram or on Facebook if you have any other further questions. But first and foremost, you can always go to thecowifecoach.com or even check me out on YouTube as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu feekum, sister. It's really been a pleasure talking to you. And alhamdulillah, it was worth the wait as well. So I'm glad that you took the time, because I know you're a very busy woman. I'm really grateful that you took the time to talk to me today and, contribute to this series, because I think definitely your opinions are invaluable. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, definitely. Alhamdulillah.
And I appreciate you reaching out, and may Allah continue to bless you in all of the things that you are doing for the community to educate people, to make people, to bring awareness to people globally. May Allah bless you and grant you much barakat as well. Allahumma ameen.
Ameen, ameen. And may Allah bless you and your family abundantly. Ameen, ameen.
Ameen, ameen, and yours as well. Ameen, ya Rabbi, ameen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.